Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm excited to be here to talk about the optimization of cover crop-based rotational tillage systems. So my name is Lea Verek, and I work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with Dr. Aaron Silva on organic and sustainable research. So in 2017, Dr. Silva and Dr. Delat wrote a paper entitled "A Decade of Progress in Organic Cover Crop-Based Reduced Tillage Practices in the Upper Midwestern USA." And in this paper, they summarized 10 years of research as well as results from on-farm adoption, and from there drew some guidelines as to where the research has to be done. And 2 points that we decided to focus on because they are of big interest for farmers. And the first one is the delayed soybean maturity, which can impact yields. And it could be due to two different things that are the delayed planting of the soybeans, because we have to wait until the cover crop reaches anthesis to be able to plant them. And the other thing, as you can see on the picture here, is I don't have the pointer. So you can see on the top, these are soybeans planted into no-till conditions, and on the bottom, soybeans planted into tilled conditions. And you see that it's 10 days after planting for both of them, and the no-till soybeans take much longer to grow in the early development stages. And the other point that we wanted to work on is the contamination of the subsequent small grain crop, which also can be very big of a problem for farmers when they grow small grains after soybeans, and then they have rye in their small grain, and they go to the elevator and their load get rejected. So that our hypotheses are that the earlier planting of the soybeans into the standing cover crop will result in higher yields, and that using winter triticale will generate less volunteer cover crop while providing equivalent weed control and soybean yield. So this is a picture of the Rodel roller crimper. Our research is conducted at the Arlington Agricultural Research Station in Arlington, Wisconsin. So that's the upper Midwest, as you can see on the map. And the soil that we are working on is a plano-sealed loam. This picture is an illustration from USDA and RCS of a plano-sealed loam. This is very deep and well drained, and we have roughly 4% organic matter on the topsoil. So we initiated the research in 2016 and had 2 harvests in 2017 and 2018. We use a split plot design, and our plots are a 9 by 60 meter, which allows us to use farm scale equipment. The whole plot factor is the cover crop. We use 3 different cover crops, 2 varieties of rye and 1 variety of triticale. The 2 varieties of rye are Herbustuk and Spooner, and the triticale is NE426GT. And we always have a no cover control. The subplot factor is the soybean planting date. So we have the early planted soybeans in the standing cover crop when it reaches Zadok stage 45, also known as boot stage. And the other planting date is the late planted soybeans into the rolled crimp cover crop when it reaches Zadok 69, also known as anthesis. In order to get enough biomass in the spring, we plant the rye and triticale in the second half of September. In May, the cover crop reaches boot stage. As you can see on the upper picture, this is how boot stage looks like. That's when the head starts popping up of the stem. And so that happens mid to late May. And roughly 2 weeks after, the cover crop reaches anthesis. So that's when we roll crimp on top of the early planted soybeans and roll crimp and plant the late planted soybeans. In June and July, in the no cover control, we use tine meter, rotary hose, and row cultivator to control the weeds. And in Wisconsin, the harvest usually occurs mid to late October. The first data that we collect is always the cover crop biomass. And so this is in kilograms of dry matter per hectare. And you see, the first thing you can see is the difference between 2017 and 2018. We had about twice as much biomass in 2017 compared to 2018. So there are multiple factors that may cause that. First of all, the system was very different in 2017. We were coming after alfalfa, and the field was manure before planting the cover crop. The cover crop was planted on September 19th. And in 2018, we were coming after corn. We didn't put manure on the field, and the cover crop was planted much later on October 2nd. So what you see in 2018 is what we will be doing in the future, because that's what a farmer would have in his system, would have the soybeans following corn, was this problem of having not a lot of time to plant the cover crop after harvest. And if you compare the different species, the rye had less biomass than the triticale in 2017, but in 2018 they all had pretty much the same biomass. So one of the ways to measure the risk of contamination of the subsequent crop by the cover crop is to assess the amount of regrowth that you have in the field. So what I'm calling regrowth here are the new tillers that are growing back from the crown after termination of the cover crop. In 2017, we measured the biomass of regrowth. And so the biomass is a good indicator of competition with the soybeans that are growing. But in 2018, we decided to switch to a number of heads per hectares, because it's a better indicator of the number of seeds that are going to go back to the system and eventually produce rye the following year. So 2017, a rustic rye in the early planted treatment produced more regrowth than spooner rye in the late planted treatment and the boss planting dates in the triticale. In 2018, so again, this is number of heads of regrowth per hectares, and the same trend here between the two varieties of rye. A rustic had much more regrowth, boss in the late and the early planted treatments than spooner in the late planted treatments, and the triticale was not different from any of the other. So the main challenge in organic no-till is to have successful weed control. So this is the weed biomass in and between the rows of soybeans in August of 2017 and August of 2018. So one thing that I wanted to see here is the discontinued line that I added on the August 2018 graph, and it shows 200 kilograms of dry matter, which is the maximum weed pressure that we had in 2017. So 2018 was much weedier overall than 2017 was. If you compare the different cover crops, or if you compare the two different planting dates, so the lighter colored is the early planted and the stronger color is the late planted. So the early planted always have more weed pressure than the late planted for any cover crop. And comparing the rye and the control, so the green and the blue are the two varieties of rye, and the control is the purple one. So the rye never has more weed than the control, and even in August of 2018, in the rows, it was not significantly lower, but it has slightly less weeds than the control treatment, which is no cover crop. Looking at the triticale, so that's the yellow on the chart, you see that it always has more biomass. It's never significantly higher, but it's always higher, more weed biomass in and between the rows than the control. So here are data that are directly related to the soybeans. So this is stand count, nodulation, and soybean yields. For all of these measurements, the higher the better. You want more stand count, you want more nodulation and higher yields. So I use the color code of green is the highest and red is the lowest. So if you just look at the data from 2017, you see that the bottom part of the table is greener than the top part, meaning that our late planted treatments were more successful than the early planted treatments. It's the case for every cover crop. It's not the case for the control. It doesn't seem to affect the soybeans to plant them earlier or later into bare ground. So looking at the bottom part of 2017, comparing the different cover crop in the late plant treatments, the two varieties of rye, rustic and spooner, have pretty competitive stand counts and competitive yields compared to the control. And the triticale had a lower stand count than the control, but the yield was not necessarily affected. Looking at 2018, so the bottom part of the graph is also greener than the top part, but what you see is that rustic rye and spooner rye didn't do too bad in 2018 in the early planted treatments, and then the same trend in the late planted treatments are observed in 2018 than in 2017. And the last thing that I want to show you here is the nodule count. So there was no significant difference in 2017, but there is always more nodules in the control treatment than in the no-till treatments. And the same trend was observed in 2018, and this time we had a significant difference. So to summarize, across all organic no-till treatments, we see decreased soybean stand count as well as decreased soybean nodulation, but the best no-till treatment provides equivalent weed suppression and equivalent soybean yields. Between the different varieties, the triticale has the same impact on nodulation, and it produces as much or more biomass than the rye. So it produces equivalent or lower regrowth, which is what, if you remember the hypothesis that we wanted to see if the triticale was going to have less impact on the subsequent small grain, and it looks like in some cases yes, in some cases no, so we don't have an answer to that yet. And it also provides poor weed suppression and poor yield. Comparing the different rye varieties, the advantages are less clear. Rustic matures a little earlier than spooner, which can be beneficial if you want to plant your soybeans earlier. But you also have more regrowth with rustic compared to spooner. Finally, comparing the early and the late planted treatments, planting early has the same impact on nodulation as planting late. It provides equivalent or poor weed control, equivalent or lower stand count, and equivalent or lower yields, and higher or equivalent regrowth. But the results that we saw in 2017 and 2018 contrast with the 3 previous years of data that were showing yield advantage of the early planted treatments. So to conclude, we can achieve comparable weed suppression and comparable yields in organic no-till soybean, but we need to improve soybean establishment and root development, as well as identify species and varieties for both cover crop and soybeans, and understand the year-to-year impact of weather variability on decision-making, including planting dates. So the next step for us, we're going to work on a conservation innovation grant, which is multi-state and multi-location. We're going to work with Iowa State University as well as the Rodale Institute, and it's a multidisciplinary team with agronomists, agricultural engineers, as well as soil scientists. And the goal is to optimize the soybean planting and cover crop termination. And the other project that we were going to be working on is a North Central Region SARE grant, so working together with the University of Illinois, USDA in Illinois, Purdue University, as well as nonprofit and consultants. And the goal there is to model the variability in cereal rye biomass across regions and growing conditions. If you need more information, you are more than welcome to email me or visit our website where you have more detailed data on these trials. Thank you for your attention.
Could you go back 5 slides, the one that was titled Across All No-Till Organic Treatments? I want to see the data set there. Right, one forward. Right there. That's what I want. I'm gonna write my notes.
That's it?
That's it.
Quick question about your triticale. So I used to grow something called regreen, which is a male sterile triticale. And if there's a problem with seed production, like you don't want any volunteer triticale next year, have you looked at a male sterile triticale?
No, I've never heard of it, but yeah, that's very interesting. As would the cost of that seed be higher than regular triticale?
I assume so.
Okay,
I don't know. I could put you in touch with a company that used to produce it.
thank you.
Might be interesting to look at.
Yeah,